Hi guys, thanks for joining us. So let's check if everything is okay. I think everything is okay. And yeah, so thanks for joining us. So we have Gabriel, Elliot. I don't know if you want us to call you Elliot or if you want to use
Baptiste is okay.
Baptiste. Okay, that's perfect. Yeah. And obviously Costin, we just talked about the what was the name of the SDK again? Xmod? No,
Xmod SDK.
Xmod XDK, and that's pretty interesting actually. Like I mean, I guess it's kind of like we can just like stop now, but it's pretty hard to track like what apps are doing in general. So for instance, there is this SDK that you have found. Have you guys heard of any other SDKs doing like something similar publicly? Or because there's obviously not necessarily like SDKs, but we have seen, for instance, like voice over IP, like applications being rebranded because they got purchased by a VC and sold to another country. So it's a bit like harder to keep track of it. But what about SDKs? Have you seen that in many places, or?
Well, speaking from what I've seen, as I said, there's like dozens and dozens of these SDKs that people just link into their smartphone apps for small profits, like $30, $300 per month, something like this. From having 10,000 users is quite possible there. But again, there's dozens and dozens of these SDKs, and it's probably quite complicated to keep track of all the endpoints and to see, let's say, which applications do that and which do not.
It's even worse that sometimes you confuse them with malware or adware as well. They just behave really shady and you end up diving really weird rabbit holes.
Well, this is especially the case with the bear cloud thing that I showed that, well, the checkpoint researchers called the clicker, and they talk in depth about how this, does click fraud in essence. So it's kind of, it's kind of borderline research, and as I was saying, there's no strong laws that say or regulate how this information can be collected, stored, transferred, and so on.
And there is also something else, using SDK in order to get some analytics about your users is something quite common when you develop an Android application. So there is a limit, and the limit is difficult to draw because you don't know. Sometimes analytics company will get a lot of data in order to profile the user, but the amount of data is quite big. So some company, as Costin show, are getting the location in order to sell a product behind that, but sometimes it's just an analytics company which are giving the ability to the developer to profile the user and to target some news or some features, some specific feature to their users. So this is something quite common even in the development process for an Android developer, mobile developers in general.
Absolutely, and actually I've seen these apps sending kind of debug logs back to their developers. Things like, if they crash, if something unexpected happens, there's all these SDKs, such as one signal, I guess, that allows the passing of information from the app back to the developers almost in real time. So yeah, not all of them do track your location, but I guess the ones that track your location are the most, let's say, opportunistic.
And well, obviously, like we just saw in Gabriel's presentation, location is not the only data that can be also exfiltrated. Like you're saying like the browser history, like the music. Actually, quick question I just remembered that was for Mazin in the chat. Regarding the history, was it only if you're using the official web browser or also if you use like Chrome or Brave?
They only did it using the browser that was prepackaged in MIUI.
Okay. So
oh, and I forgot, fun fact, it also happens on the browser that they published on various stores as well.
I see. And so speaking of the different apps you guys have been looked at, so Gabriel and Costin, so you had the time to give a full presentation. But Baptiste, you have been quite popular in the Indian community over the past few weeks. Can you like summarize for us and our audience what you have been like this? Well, basically, what were your findings at what you did with Aarogya Setu? I mean, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. Actually, someone in the chat was also asking about it.
So India recently published a contact tracing application, like many countries, in order to fight COVID-19. And this application is getting regularly the Bluetooth ID of people around you, and also is getting the GPS location regularly. So 2 months ago, just after the launch of the application, I decided to look at it. So I found the first security issue, which was not a very big issue. I mean, between maybe low and medium. Basically, web view activity was exported. So it was possible for an external attacker to open this web view activity and to read the internal file of the application. So they fix it in the version just after without any communication. They just fix it. And recently, like 1 week ago or 2 weeks ago, I looked back at the application and I found, so there is a feature inside the application which gives the ability to the users to know how many people are infected by COVID-19 around you. So you have the ability to say, I want to know how many people are infected in a circle with the radius of 500 meters, 1 kilometer, 10, 2, 5 of 10 kilometers. And this, when I looked at these features, the request made by the application, there was no restriction at all in the parameters. So you were able to set the location of your choice, but also you were able to set the radius of the circle you want to look at to something very, very small, like 100 meters. So it gives you the lack of restriction and also the ability to do a lot of requests gave me the ability to know who is sick in this particular house, for example, or in this famous places like the parliament, the Indian parliament, or the PMO, the Prime Minister office in India. So I was able to see that, for example, 2 people were infected in the PM office, something like that. So it was more a privacy issue. It was a way to abuse the functionality inside the application. So it was quite fun. I wrote a small write-up about it, and it literally blew up. So yeah, it was the communication phase, and I got a lot of new followers in India, a lot of comments, a lot of press release. So I try to do my best to explain what it is. And after that, I worked also on some dashboard, because in India they decided to release, each cities decided to release some maps with the location of people infected by COVID-19 with their personal data. So there is a big work in general at the country level to spread the message that privacy is important. If you are sick, you still have some rights. You still have the right to have a privacy. And there is a medical secret in France, for example, and this secret is for good reason, because if, for example, people around you know that you are infected by COVID-19, you can have some discrimination. You can be discriminate because of your health status.
It's funny you're mentioning, just to jump on that, the medical secret in France, if I remember correctly. When was that? Weren't they giving like 25 euros for like each people they would report back to the government, to medical doctors, to all the GPs in France? So because even like Macron said, like, this is a sanitary war.
Yes.
So that's like a question mark around the medical secret now, I guess.
This is quite a big topic, and this is why there is a hot debate around the contact tracing in general, mobile contact tracing application, but also manual contact tracing, because in order to fight a pandemic, you need to trace the contact of infected people. And in order to trace the contacts, you need to go inside this privacy. And for example, in Taiwan, if I remember correctly, they decided to look at the bank accounts, they decided to look at the CCTV or at the phone records in order to know exactly where you want the last 14 days. So it's in France, we as a government try to do something in the middle, but yes, it's a violation of the medical secret, because if doctors send to a non-health professional some personal data, it's a little bit complicated, and I don't think it's quite legal.
Just a quick question for the Indian app, since you had a good deep dive in it. How many users, how many people installed the app?
100 millions at this time.
100 million?
Yes, but this is, it was mandatory for the last weeks, and they decided to step back a little bit because it was not even legal in India. And now it's advised, it's strongly advised to install the application, but you still have some services where you are forced to use the application and to install the application. For example, if you want to go into a train, you need to have the application.
I think there's a bunch of countries where it's mandatory, but was it mandatory if you are tested positive, or mandatory period?
Period.
Oh, okay. What about you guys? Have you, like, do you guys know how many countries have a tracing app for like COVID-19 now?
Well, I looked a bit in this issue, this topic, and there's I guess there's a decent number of these apps. So there's a list on Wikipedia, right? There's a few other resources that I've seen, and I think that maybe even Baptiste put together a list himself that I have seen. It's quite interesting. There's a large variety. Some are mandatory, some are optional. For some countries, there's even 2 different apps, right, per region. Perhaps maybe even Baptiste wants to share his thoughts about this.
Yes, so I made a list on GitHub where you can, so there is a repo where you can find all the contact tracing application I found all over the world. And as Costin said, in some countries you have 2 applications. For example, in Spain, you have 1 application for Madrid and you have 1 for Catalonia. In Italia, it was the same thing. You had multiple applications at the beginning. In some countries, this is mandatory. I think in Qatar recently, like 2 days ago, they made the application mandatory. In India, as we said, but in a lot of European countries, this is optional. And in the US, they released an application quite recently too. So we can see a lot of initiative, a lot of new application made by the governments all over the world. They all made different choices. Even in Europe, they didn't manage to do the same thing and to use the same protocols. There is a hot debate in France, especially whether we have to use a centralized protocol or a decentralized protocol, what is the best in terms of privacy. So this is, in my opinion, this is the biggest issue. We will see a lot of new application. All these applications will be different, and all the government will try to use their legal system in order to enforce the use of this application. And some of these apps are not really privacy friendly, so we have to be careful and to expose what these contact tracing applications are really doing.
And so based on your observation, since like the pandemic started, I guess it has been a few months now, do you think like contact tracing as an app is useful, or what what type of like results do you think governments are getting out of it? Because from one aspect, you know, like if you feel like they need to have an app to like keep track of data, you know, when we know they're just struggling to get their own numbers, like from hospitals and stuff, you know, and then suddenly like they expect an app is going to do it. Is it really useful for governments? Is it really useful for people?
Clearly, this is not really useful at the moment. We cannot prove a mobile contact tracing application is really useful because this is something quite new. So we are all the government are doing that for good reason. They are trying to do something, and they don't want people to say, okay, you had the ability to create an application to fight the pandemic and you did nothing. So they want to do something and as we can see, for example, in Iceland, say 40% of the population installed the application, and the top official responsible of the contact tracers teams said the application was not really useful. And for example, in France also, we are quite sure that we will never have this level of adoption. Maybe the estimation we will have maybe between 5% or 10% of the population with the application installed. And we know that with this level, the application is not that useful. This is the same thing in Singapore. Singapore is an island with a small population, and even with this configuration, they didn't manage to use the application to fight the pandemic, and they were forced to declare a lockdown. So everyone is quite agreed on the fact that today this is not magic. It's not really useful. It's creating new issues. For example, in Australia, I think it was 2 days ago also, they said they were unable to integrate the data. The contact tracer were unable to use the data from the application because there is a integration issue. So this new tool is not really helping the real professionals, the contact tracers. So in my opinion, we need to put some effort on giving the tools to the contact tracer, to the health professionals, and forget a little bit about this magical application.
So I guess question for all of you, is there like a way to preserve is privacy still possible with contact tracing protocols, or do they have some type of like identifiable data that could be like released, like Gabriel was saying before with Xiaomi, like there's this unique code, for instance, that gets released, and it's quite easy to correlate data with each other, or like even metadata, which I guess for like most of the general public, you know, they wouldn't, if you tell them, oh, it's anonymized ID, they would like, okay, whereas in fact it can be like easily identifiable, and especially with tracing, because it's all your location, or where all the people you have seen, where you have been. So what do you think of like privacy in that scenario? And also from the apps you have seen that are claiming that privacy is definitely respected.
I think it pretty much depends on the effort that somebody wants to put into just unraveling whatever type of, I don't know, scheme the entity that stores the data used in order to anonymize all of that. Just like a lockpick, there's no such thing as a perfect lock. The effort is what matters.
There is also an important point to say. In Europe, for example, at the beginning of the pandemic, a lot of researchers from universities all over Europe decided to work on the new contact tracing application protocol with privacy in mind. And even with their effort, these guys are very, very good, and they created a protocol. They did their best, but even with this amount of skills, time, and effort, we can see that their protocol has some limitation. And as I said before, there is a hot debate between centralized or decentralized protocols. And we can see that in both protocols, there is some limitation in terms of privacy, and nothing is really perfect. And this is the core of the issue. We are fighting a pandemic, and in order to fight this pandemic, we are trying to put technology as a solution, and preserve the privacy. It's a little bit complicated, because at the end of the journey, you want to go to the doctor. You need to go to the doctor. You need to be cured by someone. So you need the identity of the infected people in order to say, okay, you have to stay home. So this is a human issue, and we need to enforce the human relations, in my opinion, and privacy cannot really be protected if we use the technology to fight the pandemic.
And what about Singapore, for instance? Because they tried different things, right? They have these app like Trace Together that they claimed they would open source it. I don't know if they ended up doing it.
They did. Yeah.
They did. So has any other government used it, and has the Singapore like experience been successful? Because I've seen even in China, like now, they detected new cases. So they're doing the confinement and again, and out of all the countries doing like any like tracing or surveillance, you'd expect China to be like using like the like latest state of art, you know, like in that term. So like, is there any experience that had been successful so far, or? Like Costin, maybe? What have you seen? Then otherwise I feel like Baptiste is gonna answer to all the questions, and then you guys gonna become shy.
No, not at all. It's hard to say. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. But I was thinking about something I've seen in the chat. Veronique was saying that in the European Union we have strict data protection laws that requires people's consent before being tracked. And this actually reminds me of an interesting story from a few days ago. I got a message from my mobile company saying that we just want to let you know that we will be sharing information, tracking information, which includes metadata produced by your smartphone, such as location, amount of traffic, and so on, with different entities, including the European Commission. It was just like a notification, just so you know. And at the very end, there was also a small note saying, but by the way, if you don't like it, you can write us a message and we will remove your data from this aggregated telemetry that we will be sending over. And it turns out that actually the European Commission has been reaching out to different big GSM operators in all European Union countries, one operator per country, asking them for such information. So many have been actually complaining exactly as Veronique is saying that there's no legal framework for the European Commission to ask for this information. And like, what is the basis of this request? To be honest, I don't know the answer to that. What I know is that for sure, telcos are actually compiling, aggregating all this information. They're preparing to send it over. Basically just notification that the data will go. It's not like, can we send your data? No, it's your data will go, and just FYI. And if you don't like that, let us know. To be honest, I did write them an email and ask to be kept out of this metadata collection, and surprisingly, I got a reply. They even called and said that they will not use my data, so hopefully. But I guess that all these frameworks and strict data protection rules, sometimes they can bend or twist, especially at the times of pandemics.
And what about you, Gabriel? Have you seen vendors, or do you think that would be invisible, like a possibility that vendors like Xiaomi would use the actual data that they already have to do like such tracing instead of asking people to install a new app?
That I do not know. I guess it mostly depends on where they store the data and what kind of laws and jurisdictions with the governments have over there. But if you think about it, they have data. I mean, in India at least, they have 25% of the market share. I haven't seen them exfiltrating any kind of GPS info. So this might be not that useful when it comes to doing any kind of contact tracing. The information that they aggregate is more, let's say, commercial in nature.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see actually for the data that apps are collecting now, if they can actually reuse it and resell it for later on. Because do you guys have seen, remember like when EFF did like this grid of like, what messenger application you should be using and what protection do you have when you don't have you guys seen any like matrix of all those apps to see what kind of data is being collected by each of them as a matrix? That would be quite a cool thing actually, because you could see, well, what's the baseline or benchmark for data being collected, and if a country is collecting more data than another, and if they could actually use that for like for other things.
I don't think I didn't see it on my side, but we should do it definitively. Yeah.
Cool. Actually, a question for you, Baptiste, from there's like few Indian guys in the chat now. They're quite excited to ask you a question. So the first one, which you don't have to answer, is what's your advice? Should Indians keep Aarogya Setu or uninstall it? And the second question is ask Elliot about the open source mode of Aarogya that he was once asked to develop.
Install or not the application is quite a big question. And I mean, you have to do this choice, and this is a personal choice. So if you are okay to give a part of your privacy in exchange of some potential protection, do it. I mean, you can install the application, but you have to know that this application is tracking the people you are meeting all the day, and also it's getting your GPS location. So if at one point you are infected by COVID-19, the government will have all your data. So you know what is in the balance, and you have to decide yourself. And regarding the second question for a mod of the application, this is quite for me, it was a big ethical question. We have, as an engineer, as an Android developer, we have the ability to modify a contact tracing application in order to remove all the privacy and invasive features of the application. So should we do it? It's not because we have the ability to do it, we have the skills to do it, we have to do it. I decided on my side to not do it, to not do a tutorial on how to do it, because I think potentially it will create too much alternative, and it will spread the wrong message. I prefer to say to people, don't use it if you don't want to use it. Use it if you want to use it, but creating a modified version is not, it's quite cool on the paper, but in reality, I don't think it will be a good thing.
And because this is live, and for people who are watching the replay, at least there's an interesting proof of it. Do you guys remember when a bunch of government asked Apple and Google to like create some modification that they could use? Even France actually was one of those governments, because people are like, well, you guys are doing GDPR, and then you find us, and now you're asking us to modify our APIs to like accommodate to your tracing feature request. So I'm just gonna show it on the screen now. But Sima just sent me like this link, which is pretty interesting. So someone just tweeted 30 minutes ago, so at the time that this is happening, a new update on iOS 13.5, which apparently has support for COVID-19 contact tracing apps from public health authorities. I don't know if you guys have had time to see it, but that's
I've seen that.
You did?
Alex Stamos tweeted about it, right?
The tweet I have is from Mike Murphy, actually. Yeah, any comments on that, Costin, since you saw the tweet?
Well, it seemed interesting, especially since we knew that this was coming for some time. And actually, today I was looking at the guidelines for the creation of these apps. So actually, I gotta say that the guidelines actually looked pretty good, in the sense that there's only one application allowed per country. So they're not going to allow things like 2 applications per country. There should be just one that uses these features. And the most important one, in my opinion, was that all these COVID-19 apps that use this API, they're not allowed to use location tracking. So they're not allowed to access your location. Very simple rule. So that means that these apps cannot track your movements around. That's not allowed by the policy. And of course, this uses other things like Bluetooth, right? Low power Bluetooth, and that's absolutely, let's say, okay. But it seemed to me that was very nice that it's forbidden to collect the location.
And what about you, Baptiste and Gabriel? I don't know if you had time to watch the specs, obviously, since it just got released. But any idea of what we can expect from that, and what that's for the iOS release? So I guess the Google one is going to be released soon.
The Google one has been already released, as far as I know. Yes, I think it's already open source on GitHub, so you can find the sources and what the protocol chosen by Apple and Google is in reality derivated from the European decentralized protocol created by some universities, and it's called it's coming from DP from a protocol called DP3T. And this protocol is quite good, in my opinion. This is the best protocol we have on the table at this moment. But as I said before, this is not perfect. There is some limitations. And if you go to the DP3T GitHub repo, you would see that there is some issues opened, some good issues, and they did a great job trying to document to write down all the limitation and to explain what is wrong with their proposition. But at this moment, we don't really have a better option, and this is why Google and Apple try to this is why they took this proposition package that with the Apple and protocol experience, let's say it like this, and they only what they did is quite clever, because they only proposed to governments an API, so they cannot they are not responsible of the applications itself. So I mean, this is for me, it's quite okay. This is a good proposition with some limitations. It's not perfect, but this is the best thing we have at the moment.
And so there is multiple protocol. The one you just mentioned is, what did you say, DT3T? No.
Yes.
DP3T, yeah.
And how many protocols are like currently out there? DP3T, yeah.
You have like I think you have two big protocols in Europe. You have the Robert protocol, which is the French proposition, and also you have this one, the DP3T protocol.
Okay, cool. Well, I guess we're reaching the end of this panel. I don't see any more questions in the chat either. So yeah, like thanks for joining us for this panel and to giving all the three of you your thoughts and insight on the current tracing and tracking apps and things that being out there. Obviously, like COVID-19 is one of the big one, but like we've seen in the keynote of Gabriel, that's not the only way to be tracked. Thanks to you guys, and
thanks.
Yeah, hope to see you soon. And
thank you.